Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, in a small hut deep in the forest, lived a brother and sister named Hansel and Gretel. Their mother had passed away when they were just babies, leaving them in the care of their loving father, a hard-working woodcutter. Though life was tough, their father did his best to provide for them while juggling his work in the woods. As the years passed, their father struggled more and more to take care of them alone. Eventually, he decided to remarry. His new wife came from a wealthy family and despised their life of poverty. She loathed living in a rundown hut in the middle of the forest. And even more so, she despised her stepchildren. One cold winter night, as Hansel and Gretel were getting ready for bed, they overheard a conversation between their father and stepmother. "How do you plan to get through this winter?" she whispered harshly. "We don't have enough food. If we don't get rid of these children, we will all starve." Their father protested angrily. "I could never abandon my children." But his wife was relentless. "There is no choice. Tomorrow we'll take them deep into the forest and leave them there." Gretel clung to her brother, sobbing, but Hansel comforted her. "Don't worry, Gretel. I'll find a way to bring us home." That night, while everyone slept, Hansel sneaked outside and filled his pockets with small white pebbles. At dawn, their stepmother woke them up, claiming they were going on a family hike. As they walked deeper into the forest, Hansel secretly dropped the pebbles along the path to mark their way back. By afternoon, their father and stepmother built a fire for them and told them to wait there. "We'll be back soon," they said. But they never returned. As night fell, the eerie sounds of the forest sent shivers down their spines. Wolves howled in the distance. But as the moon rose, the pebbles shone brightly, guiding them home. Their father was shocked and overjoyed to see them again. But their stepmother only grew angrier. Determined to get rid of them once and for all, she devised another plan. This time, she locked their door at night, preventing Hansel from collecting pebbles. Instead, Hansel crumbled a piece of bread in his pocket and scattered the breadcrumbs along the path the next morning. Once again, they were abandoned in the forest. But when they tried to follow the trail back home, they found that all the breadcrumbs had been eaten by birds. Lost and hopeless, the siblings wandered through the forest for 3 days. Weak from hunger, they stumbled upon a beautiful white bird singing a sweet melody. Enchanted, they followed it through the trees until they arrived at a peculiar house. The house was like nothing they had ever seen. It had walls made of bread, a roof of cake, and windows of glistening candy. Starving and exhausted, they ran to take a bite. Just as Hansel reached out, a voice called from inside, "Who is nibbling at my house?" Startled, they turned to see an old woman standing at the doorway. She appeared kind and gentle, and when they told her of their troubles, she invited them inside. Inside, however, the house was dark and eerie. But hunger overtook their fear, and they eagerly ate the feast she placed before them. That night, they slept in the softest beds they had ever felt. But when they awoke the next morning, the old woman was gone. As they explored, they found a small door. Inside, there were chests filled with gold and jewels. Just as they marveled at the treasure, the woman's voice boomed behind them. "What do you think you're doing?" They turned to see her standing there, not a kind old lady, but a wicked witch. Before they could run, she grabbed Hansel and locked him in a cage. Then she dragged Gretel to the kitchen. "Your brother is too thin," she cackled. "Feed him well. When he is fat enough, I shall feast upon him." Gretel had no choice but to obey, but Hansel was clever. Each day he pretended to eat, but instead he hid the food in a hole he dug in the cage. Days passed, and the witch grew impatient. "Enough. Fat or thin, I will eat him today." She turned to Gretel. "Check the oven to see if it's hot enough." But Gretel knew the witch planned to push her inside. Thinking quickly, she said, "I don't know how. Can you show me?" Grumbling, the witch leaned inside. In that instant, Gretel mustered all her strength and shoved her in, slamming the door shut. Flames engulfed the house as the witch let out a final scream. Gretel ran to free Hansel, and together they fled just as the house burned to the ground. But they were still lost. As they wandered, they came upon a river. A giant swan appeared and carried them safely across. After walking for hours, they reached a wide river. A large swan appeared and carried them across one by one. When they reached the other side, they suddenly recognized their surroundings. "Hansel, we're close to home," Gretel cried. They ran as fast as they could. When they finally arrived, their father was overjoyed to see them. Tears streamed down his face as he hugged them. "My dear children, I thought I had lost you forever," he sobbed. He explained that their stepmother had left, returning to her wealthy family. He had searched for them endlessly, filled with regret. "I was a fool to listen to her," he said sorrowfully. Hansel and Gretel loved their father despite everything, and they forgave him. Then they reached into their pockets and revealed the gold and jewels they had taken from the witch's house. Their father was speechless. With their newfound wealth, they never had to worry about food again. Their days of suffering were over. From that day on, Hansel, Gretel, and their father lived happily ever after, never again fearing hunger or cruelty. The dark forest no longer held terror for them, for they had faced it and won.